Long before Europeans arrived, North America was a landscape of staggering scale. Imagine traveling this continent, where crossing into a new river valley or stepping into a distant forest meant coming face to face with people speaking an entirely different language. This map shows how that diversity actually looked. Prior to European contact, this land echoed with hundreds of distinct languages, belonging to dozens of completely different language families. It was one of the most culturally complex regions on Earth. And even when neighboring nations couldn't understand a word the other said, they still built vast interconnected networks. Through complex systems of trade and regional diplomacy, these communities shared traditions and forged alliances across immense distances. When colonizers arrived, they brought their own expectations of how history should be recorded. Because they didn't find traditional paper archives or alphabets, they assumed the continent lacked a recorded past, choosing instead to overwrite the map with their own labels like New France and New Mexico. But that assumption missed the reality of the landscape. If these hundreds of distinct nations didn't rely on written text, how did they record, protect, and pass down their complex histories for generations? In the absence of ink and paper, history was preserved through highly disciplined memory. As seen here, an elder speaks directly with a young child. Knowledge was actively and formally transferred from one generation to the next. These oral traditions served a critical function. They were careful, intentional records, containing a nation's origin stories, their legal frameworks, and accounts of major historical events. We see this structured preservation in action here, with a group gathered around a large drum. Music, utilizing flutes, rattles, and vocal chants, functioned as embodied history, communal events designed specifically for remembrance. Accompanying this music, physical movement and dance acted as another form of documentation, expressing and reinforcing specific community identities, spiritual beliefs, and shared gratitude. Because each nation had its own story to tell, no single style represented all Indigenous peoples. Every community developed its own unique ceremonial practices to physically encode and protect their specific heritage. That preservation extended into the physical world as well. Look at this individual actively shaping clay. Artists across the continent dedicated immense physical labor to creating pottery, textiles, and basketry. Indigenous nations used these physical objects as a visual lexicon. The specific weave of a textile or the shape of a pot functioned as a permanent tool for documentation. Notice the intricate human figures and geometric patterns woven right into the fibers of these baskets. These designs hold the specific records of family lineages, spiritual laws, and community histories. Looking at this array of colorful beaded pouches, the incredible variety becomes clear. Every single region developed its own distinct visual style, effectively serving as localized historical archives. Through the strict discipline of oral storytelling, the structure of communal ceremony, and the precision of symbolic art, pre-colonial North America was actually an extensively documented continent. But the arrival of European colonizers brought enormous challenges. Native communities faced the catastrophic impact of new diseases, forced displacement from their ancestral lands, and a deliberate campaign of cultural suppression. These assimilation efforts specifically targeted traditional knowledge systems. Institutional programs systematically separated students from their families and standardized their classrooms, leading to a severe decline in the fluency of many Indigenous languages. Yet, these systems possessed a built-in resilience. Because their historical records were encoded within the people themselves, carried in memory, in song, and in physical skill, rather than sitting in fragile, stationary libraries, the knowledge could survive the displacement of the communities. That cultural endurance continues into the present day. In this image, a teacher points to sentence structures on the chalkboard, actively preserving and teaching an Indigenous language to a new generation. The story of Native America did not end with colonization. To understand the true history of this landscape, we have to look beyond paper records and learn to listen to the continuing, living voices of the continent.